When your company earns unlimited 2% cash back on all purchases with Capital One, that's serious business. So Stephen at SandCloud got a serious business card, the Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One.
We used our 2% cash back to help build our retail presence.
Savvy, Stephen.
And we get big purchasing power, so our business can spend more and earn more.
The Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at CapitalOne.com/SparkCashPlus.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial. With
your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Yeah, buddy. Welcome back to Heard Tell. Okay, this is going to be fun. We usually talk about movies with him because he is a 3-time board-certified film critic, and we're going to get into the superhero movies and the box office blowing up this summer. But he's also a wrestling fan, and we talk a little wrestling offline. So with the death of Hulk Hogan, we're going to get into that with him too. Louis Mendez Movie Report's just doing banger box office. See what I did there? How you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good. Been doing about as well as the box office. Box office been doing really good. And a lot of people aren't talking about this, but with Hogan's passing, it's kind of the timing is a little eerie because they've got a pretty big show coming up this weekend as we record this. So it's kind of all coming together.
Yeah, there was some talk about they maybe rushed the SmackDown tribute so they wouldn't have to deal with this for SummerSlam, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to get into the Hulk Hogan thing this way because in my lifetime, I was born in 1980. So when I'm a little kid, Hulk Hogan, even if you thought it was hokey and wrestling's fake, Hulk Hogan was a beloved cultural icon. But I want to get into Hulk Hogan this way. He went from cultural icon in the cable TV era and, of course, Rocky III. He goes into the reality TV era of the aughts and early 2000s. And that is insight into a person who already has icon status. Then it covers viral video, cancel culture, all that stuff because of the sex tape with Bubba the Lump Sponge's wife. And he goes on the racist tirade and all that. Then you have all the tabloid stuff after that and the problems with his son, Nick. And then you have the Gawker stuff, which is media, which is Peter Thiel comes in and backs him in that lawsuit. And of course, Peter Thiel goes on to do political things with J.D. Vance and others. And then you have the return where he becomes a pitchman. And then you have him showing up at the RNC. And you go from the 80s where he's the most universally beloved cultural icon in wrestling to the last time we saw him a few weeks ago at Saturday Night Main Event. He's booed out of the building. I think this is a story not just of Terry Bollea, the man, Hulk Hogan, the character. I think this is a fascinating insight to how media has changed how we look at icons like that.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I even said on Twitter that you could almost make if anyone ever tries to do a biopic on Hogan, they really need to come at it from sort of this epic, tragic tale of how perception can change over time of someone, because you take this guy who basically beat up his body to the point that it may or may not, we obviously have to wait until for time and more information to come out, but may have not contributed to his passing, who beat up his body to get the adulation of crowds. and he was so beloved. He was a fabric of Americana. He was in movies. He was in games. He was in shows. He became bigger than wrestling. He took wrestling from being this niche thing with territory that was divided by territories into becoming this worldwide phenomenon where it's got its big fans. There are people who have never bothered with wrestling at all, and they know who Hulk Hogan is. He became so massive. And then in the 90s, he changes the game by doing his heel run, or for folks who aren't aware of what that term means, basically doing the bad guy thing on WCW, and completely changes the way that these characters are presented to us. In a way that I think helped, because WWE definitely took a lot of lessons from what was going on with the NW and WCW to do the Attitude Era that really revitalized them, and really changed it from being this looking like this sort of hokey thing that was just for kids to something that everybody could get into with certain grounded characters, more shades of gray, I should say. And then in the 2000s, as a legend, he does the whole Hogan Knows Best on VH1. Back when VH1 was big, I have no idea what on earth VH1 is doing these days. But back then, I remember during the 2000s, which those were my teenage years, and I remember like VH1 was massive with the reality show stuff. Hogan had a massive show on there. But then it sort of really is in the 2010s when sort of this facade started to break, and and it's almost like the crowds that love this man started to see not Hulk Hogan but Terry Bollea the man, and the whole the disturbing racist tapes that got out there, the whole situation with his son and his friend getting to that vegetative state, and then inevitably the cherry on top, Hogan decided to get involved in politics at one of the most politically divisive times that we've ever seen. And to the point that when we get to the final time that we see this man on TV, he's getting booed out the building. It's really kind of like this interesting, tragic fall of this hero. And now with his sudden passing, it's sort of this very complicated situation, because there are people who want to celebrate how important this man was to the wrestling industry, and yet there's all these ugly things that we found out about him that have complicated things. And I think that's why you've seemingly see this very big split among how to address all this between the younger and older generations. Gen Z's, what they knew about Hogan mostly was all this controversial stuff that he was getting caught up in. They weren't around for when he was such a big cultural icon and hero. And in the wrestling industry, because for the longest time, as beloved as Hogan was, it was well known in the wrestling industry that he wasn't necessarily one of the more respected guys. He was known for keeping guys down. He was involved in union busting. There were a lot of things that led to him not being very well respected in the industry, even though he gave as much as he did to it. I agree with you 100%. I think if anybody ever tries to tackle a biopic of this man, you have to come at it from this sort of like this almost like a Greek tragedy of sorts, how he went from being this hero and icon to getting booed out the building just months before his passing.
Yeah, the last episode I recorded, and I hate to compare people, but because it's so close, I don't have a choice. Ozzy Osbourne died a couple days apart from Hulk Hogan. And the thing about Hogan, and I've watched, look, I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling, so the Monday Night Wars, I was usually back in my mom's bedroom, my hand on the TV, so I could switch it off real quick if I heard her coming down the hallway, right? Sorry, Mom, it's just true. The statute of limitations. But I was a wrestling fan, and I watched all that stuff when Hogan was doing the WCW stuff. I'm a little too young. I knew the cultural part of Hogan more than the in-ring stuff from the 80s because I was, 6, 7, 8 years old. So I knew what the big yellow fingers meant, but I didn't really watch the product, if that makes sense. But Ozzy died. A lot of people thought Ozzy was a gimmick. And it was, the Prince of Darkness. Yeah, that was a gimmick. And gimmick, let's slow down. The parlance for wrestling people, the gimmick is the presentation. Hulk Hogan was the gimmick for Terry Bollea, right? You can go back before him when he was, the Boulder Brothers and all that other stuff. But Terry Bollea, the man, Hulk Hogan's the gimmick. A lot of people thought Ozzy was a gimmick, and it kind of was. But Ozzy was just always being Ozzy, even though he had the gimmick and the Prince of Darkness and all that was a little tongue-in-cheek. And Ozzy died absolutely beloved. Universally beloved, except for a couple idiots on the internet. Hogan's almost the opposite, because Terry Bollea, there's the old adage in wrestling, man, you become your gimmick. And we've seen it happen with Ric Flair. Terry Bollea may be the most glaring example of it. You just could not separate Hulk Hogan from Terry Bollea at the end. And I'm sure with his family and his wife and his kids and all that, and we know the train wreck his ex-wife is online and all that, I think he just really became the gimmick for business reasons, and I don't begrudge him that because he made a lot of money. There's the stuff in the last few years with the politics and all that. He was very calculated. That's what made him Hulk Hogan. He picked the right moments to do things. He picked the right moments to go to Vince McMahon and backstab the AWA and all that story. He picked the right moment to turn heel with WCW. He was good at picking moments until he wasn't good at picking moments. And the gimmick overate it. And in the modern era where people have all the information and they can see the viral video, I think it's important what you said about the generation gap. I know my kids and their friends and younger, that 26, 27 and younger demographic, they got zero tolerance for racist behavior. They got zero tolerance for bigotry. If they see it on a viral clip, they're done. Especially if you never get a straight out apology, with Hogan never really gave for any of that. And there was other instances. I think those two parallels where there was a gimmick, but it was just the guy and the gimmick lined up to it. And then you had Terry Bollea chasing the gimmick and chasing the gimmick and chasing the gimmick. And the modern Greek tragedy is he became the gimmick and people utterly rejected it. Not just the general public, the wrestling fans. When he showed up and got booed out of Saturday Night Main Event, which was his show, that show was designed for Hulk Hogan to be on network TV, the original run of it. Man, that was one of those moments where you go, time catches up with people, the truth catches up with people. I'm not dancing on the grave. This is just how stuff works out. People that had access to the information, that were the biggest hardcore wrestling fans, rejected the guy, the gimmick, the whole thing. For somebody my age, it was really an amazing moment and a real, let's keep using the term, it really is a Greek tragedy because it was man and hubris and just that classic story.
Oh, yeah. And people have to understand, because I know there were some accusations that, he got booed out just because it was Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is a very blue city. Which is true. I mean, Los Angeles shifted right considerably in 2024, and was still a landslide win for Harris. But in the very same show, The Undertaker, who had Donald Trump on his podcast, got a hero's reception. So it goes further than any politics of the city that he was in. The industry, I mean, it got to the point where there are wrestlers who would tongue-in-cheek take shots at fans, and the fans would sort of like refer to them as Hogan, as a derogatory term. That just tells you how much his status had fallen as a cultural icon. And if you think about it, this kind of just struck me as we've been having this conversation. After the whole controversy that happened with his son and the whole car crash situation, he started to kind of be being beloved again. He appeared at WrestleMania 30, had a pretty good reception and all that stuff. And then before everything just started to become this avalanche, and that whole thing of chasing fame and being obsessed with being in the spotlight, if he had just stayed low and not constantly be trying to be in the spotlight during his final years, he probably could have saved himself a lot more goodwill. But these guys, especially in the wrestling industry, where they don't know when to quit, they don't know how to retire. Even if they're not wrestling anymore, they want to show up at the show and get the big crowd to cheer for them. There's a I'm not even sure if it's available anymore on the WWE's library for people to see publicly, but there was this reality show called Legends House back in the early to mid 2010s. And there's an episode where Nick Nolte comes in as a guest, and Roddy Piper, who is no longer with us, has a conversation with him of, you actors, people don't think of you as the character that you're playing. We basically are seen as the characters that we're playing. And you see this in anybody who tries to critique wrestling, the wrestling product, because if they try to say, well, this character isn't working for me, I'm not really a big fan of seeing this character succeed. If a wrestler sees that, they'll take that as a personal shot instead of somebody who's trying to break down a narrative work, and whether it works for them or not. And so it's a whole different ballgame than if it's not just someone simply being a character. It gets to a point where someone is seen as the character.
And it's more than the characters, because now the Gawker things, and it's interesting because the political narrative for the folks that are, Trump supporting and whatever, and that's fine. The media ecosystem around Trump has really harped in on the Gawker stuff. Gawker, how do I say this, Jim? Terry Bollea, the guy, Hulk Hogan, did a horrible, terrible thing. And the racist comments that he never fully did the full apology for. And by the way, folks, you can get mad if you want to. He did a locker room apology, quote unquote, in air quotes, if you're listening on the podcast, where he went to the WWE locker room. He had to do the apology before they'd let him back on the show, basically. And he non-apologized. He just said, don't get caught on video. I'm paraphrasing. That really hurt him in the locker room. You never got the full apology. The thing with the Gawker thing, though, was it was really two bad people suing each other, and the one bad person had a better principle and legal position, and won. Gawker getting their comeuppance was a good thing in my humble but accurate opinion. Hulk Hogan was an imperfect tool to do that, but I think it was the right judgment and the right call. And the way, look, I don't want anybody to lose their jobs, but the way Gawker and the people at Gawker in that era conducted themselves, especially online to people, was pretty abhorrent. I think that's fair to say. And the Peter Thiel angle to it, people are going and grabbing that and putting it with him coming out with all the Trump stuff and the RNC speech and all that. But that's one slice of this. You have to take the full context of, like, yes, he took down Gawker. Why was he in that position to start with? He's on videos sleeping with his buddy's wife, consensual. It wasn't unfair. They were all swingers or whatever. None of my business. I don't care. And he's saying all this racist stuff on a sex tape that should have never got out. That's just such a microcosm of what a hot mess our media coverage is. No, it shouldn't have gotten out, but people have a right to judge that. And people did judge it. And especially when you don't get an apology for it, and then you later on get the telephone calls with him talking to Nick and he says more racist stuff. People judge that now. And just winning a court case or just showing up at an RNC, there's a segment of the media now that wants to wash all the rest of it away because it fits their current narrative. That's why I started out saying, like, you have the cable TV era, you have the reality TV era, then you have the viral video era, and Hogan encompasses all that, and it affected him in different ways. And I think it's a fascinating Rosetta Stone into our culture and how we're doing media nowadays.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of the Hogan controversies began before he even decided to start getting involved in politics towards the end there. Like that's why when he showed up at the RNC, for some people was almost like just a doubling down of a stereotype for him to do. But it also is like he tried to get involved in all these other things. Like at the end of his life, he was trying to hawk this Great American Beer, which was supposed to be a response to all the Bud Light culture war stuff, the Bud Light culture war stuff that like nobody talks about anymore, and yet he's out running around hawking this beer. He really kind of just like he really started towards the end of his life kind of just constantly digging himself in these holes, which all culminated in the infamous what will be tragically the last moment of his on TV, getting booed out the building. A building that, as you could argue, is as filled as it is because of his contributions to wrestling, and yet here he is getting booed out the building by these people, no longer beloved. And yeah, I mean, it's just amazing to see what happened to him.
Yeah, and the booing out of the building, the beer was a part of it because the smart fans knew WWE had bought in as a part of that, and they had a marketing deal with it. I think they had an ownership piece of it. That was one of those reactionary. That was part of it too. More like the politics is part of it, yes. But the WWE audience, as opposed to other wrestling audiences, like probably like AEW, which is, I would say, more progressive. I think that's a fair way to put it.
Yeah.
They're a more traditional audience in a lot of ways in the WWE. They know about that. They knew, oh, he's here to hawk this beer. And poor Jimmy Hart's out there waving an American flag, getting booed out of the building. And Jimmy Hart's the nicest guy ever. Poor guy. But they know that. The audience knows that. And people don't keep up on wrestling. The biggest change in wrestling in the internet era is the smart mark fans. The ones that they know is going on, but they also pick and choose their information so that they create their own little world inside of wrestling. For an entire arena to boo Hulk Hogan out of the building, it wasn't just the politics. It wasn't just the fact that he's embellished every story ever up, from everything from, working 500 days out of the year to to auditioning for Metallica, just all kinds of crazy lies he's told over the years. They know all of that piece. There's the family piece. There's the racism piece. And then it's like, we know the only reason you're here is to sell beer. And they're just like, no, the modern fan is not into. Ric Flair's had this problem when he shows up. They know when they're just being hawked a product now, and they don't like it. And then you put everything else on top of it. The smart fans get a lot of heat and hatred, but they weren't wrong with Hogan.
No, they weren't. And I think it got to the point where even like some casual fans started to catch on. And you're right. It is various audiences. UFC, I would say it's a right wing crowd. AEW is definitely more progressive. WWE is more in between. And like I said, in the very same show, The Undertaker, who had Donald Trump on his podcast, who's very open about his politics, got a hero's welcome. It's because The Undertaker has gone on to be very well respected. He's still trying to give to the business. Hogan was not seen that way. He lost that respect that he used to have as a veteran. And regardless, all these things that we are saying, regardless, it doesn't take away from the fact that a lot of the things he did helped to create the business, put the business where it is, I should say. And what a big part of culture and the fabric of Americana that he was. But he did, unfortunately, put himself in this position where when the man passes, it's this big, complicated conversation to have compared to Ozzy Osbourne, where it was almost nothing but love for him when he passed.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the realness part. Hulk Hogan, the character, and Terry Bollea, the man, we want to love our media figures. Naturally, we want to. Now, it's a little different in the, to quote the old Offspring song, it's cool to hate, right? There's this segment of online, and sometimes I'm guilty of it because I'm overly cynical. Sometimes you're a much more happy-go-lucky guy than me. I'm very cynical. You're a very happy-go-lucky guy. You go to a movie cynical, you go to the movie and like, I want to like this movie, and I'm more like, I'm not going to go watch that movie, period. And then you're like, no, give it a chance. You're more happy-go-lucky than me. But there's this segment of the modern media and modern online and modern social media where they just want to hate everything. That's a fair critique. There is people that just want to hate Hulk Hogan because it's the cool thing to do. I think there was a little bit of that in the LA appearance where it's like, oh, once it started going, I think it became a thing where like everybody jumped on it. That's fair to say. That's true too. But at the same time, there's been this cover for the people who are bad faith actors, and we've seen it with the Hogan stuff in the last few days, especially on the political side of, well, if you say anything negative about this person for any reason, you're just a hater. And I understand cancel culture is a thing, although I hate that term. No, Hogan's a very complex person. And if you're going to talk about his place in history and entertainment, not just wrestling, he was in Rocky 3 when people don't understand the cultural significance of that movie when he showed up to it. That, along with the national expansion and the timing, is what really kicked off the WWF at the time, WWE as we modern know it, was that movie and him getting that mainstream attention and going on the talk shows and choking out Richard Belzer, rest in peace. I love him so much. All that stuff happened because of Rocky 3. He was the crossover guy, but he was also the character Hulk Hogan made by Vince McMahon with perfect timing and everything that went on. And then, and I hate to keep coming back to it, but I just find it so fascinating. It's the people that rejected him. It's the fans that rejected him. And they rejected him not because of a storyline and not because of Gawker and not because of the sex tape and not because of the racist comments, because there's been wrestlers that have made racist comments before and it'll happen again and it'll keep happening. They rejected Terry Bollea, the man, because the more they found out about him, through the reality show, through the viral video era, through the remake, they were okay with him showing up as a legend. They just didn't want to see him all the time. The more they found out about the man, the less they liked the man. And I don't think it's hating, and I don't think it's unfair to say we can take the totality of this man's life and go, he had greatness, he had a great ability, he had talent, he had an amazing business sense. I don't think anybody can argue that as far as timing and getting his and whatever. And he made really bad personal choices that ruined almost all of it in the public's eye. The totality of a person is really hard for us to do in our modern era. And yet, if we're going to be good human beings using this technology of social media and instant media and tailored media, we have to be able to take something like Hulk Hogan and go, we're going to look at the totality of this man. We're not just going to hot click it. We're not just going to try to get a viral moment out of a response to it and go, like a lot of historical figures, which he now is after he's passed away, there's ups, there's downs, and the whole story matters for us to learn what to learn from it going forward and have proper context.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, if you look at the two differences, like talking about Ozzy, the big story with Ozzy was kind of like, wow, he passed away just 2 weeks after his final ever concert, which they knew it was going to be his final ever concert. With Hogan, we literally just a couple months ago we're having this whole online discussion about, hey, did you see how this guy got rejected by the very people that used to love him? So it is a big part of the story, and it's like, well, how did that happen? How did this happen to this man? How did he get there?
Yeah, and the answer to that question is the people that paid the most attention to it were the ones that knew the most about it, and they're the ones that rejected him. And then the media, you know, the right-wing media that just knew him because of the Trump stuff and the Real American Beer and all that, those people, the casual fans and all them, they're surprised when the people who know the most did the most rejecting. And that's why I bring it up. I think this is where you study it. You know, look, we all got to stand before our God and answer for our sins. I'm not judging the man particularly, although I can fruit inspect his life and the racism and the things like that, you know, we don't condone. But the character and the media persona of it The people that knew it the best rejected it the worst. And the people that are saying you're not allowed to do that are the people that airdropped in just for the viral moment of it or because it suits their purposes. And that's not just a Hulk Hogan story. That's a political story. That's every time we have a major trending thing. That's every time we have a natural disaster. That's every time we have a school shooting now. That's every time we have a political scandal or a celebrity scandal. We just did this with the Coldplay stuff. We did this with the guy that murdered the healthcare exec. Every story now is following this same model. The people that pay the most attention to it will have the strongest reactions. And then the people that are just showing up to grab a media hit or clicks are, waving their finger at them, almost contrarian no matter what. This is how every story's getting covered now, I feel like.
Yes, because that's the way social media is now. I mean, this is how it is these days. This isn't like in the old days. Like I'm in a weird way, because there's a lot of people now. The group of people among the Gen Zers and stuff are growing more and more, who are not aware of the days where we had to wait as information came in and then react to it. Like, I'm sort of blessed in that I am old enough that I saw what it used to be like. I saw what media and the way that we took in news used to be like. Now it's everything is automatic. You find yourself you can find yourself sucked in and reacting to it and going, well, I mean, I've done it. I've been guilty of it, where something some news breaks, I have a reaction to it, and then it's like, maybe I should have. Okay, hold on. You know what? Let me wait a little bit to see more information. Like, it's just the way that it is these days, where when you have the world at your fingertips, seemingly, with social media and the way that news comes in, it's so easy to just constantly be like reacting to it without taking in all the information or seeking out who would know the best of that information. And I mean, I don't have any answers whatsoever on how to make that better, but it just seems to be where we are right now.
One other thing with the Hulk Hogan thing, then I'm going to talk some movies with you. Culturally, I find it very interesting that people have tried to do that model with a lot of things. You just artificially is the wrong word, but you know what I'm saying. You take a character and you build it up and you make it a superstar. Vince McMahon and the WWE, WWF at the time took what was already pretty popular in a lot of ways, Hulk Hogan, or was going to become Hulk Hogan, and made it the superstar. And the marketing and the branding it to the kids, and Hulkamania, right? And the T-shirts and the big yellow foam fingers, which were just ubiquitous. Everybody had one of them stupid fingers back in the late 80s. And all of that. And then the people that spun off that, Mr. T, that sort of thing. The branding, the marketing, all that. People paid attention to that. That really became a model for a lot of other things. And you can see a thread through the Hulk Hogan thing. I'm going to go back to Rocky 3 because you're a movie guy. That cross-promotional thing in movies wasn't done a lot at that time. And people go, oh, not only are you going to get on, Johnny Carson or a late night show if you show up on this movie, if you're a sports figure, you get to hype your sport. If you're a music figure and you do a movie, you get to hype up your music. If you're a wrestler, you get to hype up wrestling. That cross-promotional thing now is to the point where the studios are making movies just so they can get the cross-promotional star in the movie. And you have TV shows built like this. One of the things that's changed in the Hulk Hogan era is he was kind of one of those first cross-purposes guy. He was more than a wrestler, but that business model now is way more ubiquitous to the point where that's almost standard operating procedure. When the UFC does something, it's who's in the first row of the crowd, Donald Trump or whoever. WWE, they're always having superstars in, but it's crossed over the other side now where movies and TV shows, they always want that big guest star. They always want that musical act. Can we get this person to do this role? This is something that you see all the time now that Hogan really was a pioneer in one way or another.
Yes. I mean, when he did the Thunder, was Thunder Lips in Rocky 3, that was really just before he was really going to blow up with WWE. He had already been picking a lot of people. Like Hulkamania wasn't born necessarily in WWE. He was in the AWA doing his thing, and at one point he was, even when he did WCW, that wasn't his first heel run. He did the heel thing for a bit. Had a feud with Andre the Giant in AWA, but he did, and then he tried to use that first it was like cameos, like he's in Gremlins 2 and stuff like that. But then he tried to do movies, Suburban Commando, Mr. Nanny. I think he's in one of the Three Ninjas movies.
Can we mention No Holds Bar is one of the worst movies ever made? Can we acknowledge that, folks? If you, it's got to be on YouTube somewhere. I didn't look. If you've never seen No Holds Barred and you know anything about wrestling and anything about movies, it is one of the worst movies ever made, and you just have to watch it to see how bad the train wreck is. Please go watch No Holds Barred. It's so terrible.
And apparently that was completely produced by McMahon and Hogan. That was a whole damn.
And it shows in retrospect.
That's not a very good movie. I haven't seen it in ages now, but yeah, it's not good. But he didn't necessarily have the same success that Dave Bautista, John Cena, or The Rock have had in transitioning to doing movies or shows and stuff like that. But he was arguably the first major wrestler that showed that you could do it. To go from being in this thing that people at the time thought was corny and hokey and fake, and who cares about that, to the point now that you have 3 major wrestlers coming out with movies every year. To the point now that I'm keeping an eye out if this is going to be an award season that features Dwayne Johnson in it, because he's going to be part of a UFC biopic. So he really was the pioneer in that, especially for the wrestling industry.
I'll just wrap up the Hogan portion of this way. I think, because I'm a little older than you, I think I'm going to remember the Hulk Hogan stuff for he was an icon that fell because of hubris. It's almost, we talked Greek tragedy. It's very Icarian. He got up and he figured out how to fly, but he just couldn't get close enough to the sun for his own ego and wound up crashing and burning. I think I'm going to really take away the media part of this, of how the media era changed, and he didn't adapt to, let's call it what it was. He didn't adapt to the media era he was in, and plenty of dirty people do dirty deeds and figure out how to be okay on camera, and he never figured out how to do that. Yes, I know the Gawker tape was illegally, missed me with that. I think I'm going to remember Hogan as kind of that Icarian figure of, he got the highs, but the highs were never good enough. And his hubris kind of brought him down, and he didn't adapt to the world as it changed around him, and it really hurt him and hurt his legacy. And he brought it on himself. It's not the public's fault he did what he did. But he also, you can't really write the modern entertainment story without him. And that's part of the legacy as well. How are you going to remember Hulk Hogan now that he's passed?
I think I'm going to remember him exactly like you just said. And again, I think if you're a younger person, the only thing that you think of with Hogan, especially if you're not particularly a wrestling fan who goes back to watch the old stuff, you're just going to remember all the controversies and all that stuff. But I can't not think about the fact how important this man was to the wrestling industry. I can't think about the big moments he was part of in the wrestling industry. Whether I had to watch them back because I wasn't around at the time, or if I watched them happen live. I'll never forget watching The Rock and Hogan in that big moment at WrestleMania 18. And he is a part of culture, especially culture in the 80s and 90s, and then reality TV in the 2000s. But you're right, he did have a Greek tragedy in that he went from beloved icon, loved from the crowds, to his final ever moment on wrestling TV, on the form of entertainment that he made his bread and butter with, was getting booed out the building, rejected by the fans that at one point loved him. And again, if anybody ever does a biopic on this man, I really think that is the story that you should be telling, is how did we get to that point for this man.
I got to ask you, who plays Hogan, though? I know a few years ago they almost got one off the ground and Hemsworth was supposed to play him.
Yeah.
That probably would have worked okay. It projecting out now because it's going to take you 4 or 5 years to do it. I think somebody will greenlit something now with him dead, because the folks that don't understand, it's way easier to do biopics when somebody's dead than when they're alive for lots and lots of reasons. Studios prefer to do it that way. Plus, you get the whole story. Who do you pick? Because you watch a lot more movies than I do. They'll probably get somebody we've never heard of, but who would you get to play Terry Bollea?
I mean, I think Hemsworth would be a really interesting choice.
He's getting a little old, though.
He is, but I mean, he's still got a body that a lot of guys would wish to have. But I don't know, like Hemsworth just stands out to me too much. But also, like, I'm trying to think, thinking here in my head, and I mean, he's the one that's what they'll probably end up doing is finding somebody that I'm not that isn't well known, and go with something like that. So that's my
The
thing.
Rock's going to play him. That would be the perfect. That would be the perfect mashing of the two biggest egos in the history of the sport. Is the Rock does the Rock plays Hogan. They figure out some way to do it. I'm only half kidding. I don't like going to movies. I would pay money to go watch that in the theater just for what a train wreck it would be.
That would be a fascinating study. But there's almost a part of me that almost wonders if no, because if you do it, you can't just do an impression. You also have to hit that growl in his voice. So yeah, they're gonna have to find someone who's can't just they really got to hit the nail on the head doing Hogan.
You know, one that just popped into my head though, and he may not do it because he did Iron Claw and was so good on it, but Jeremy Allen White was so good in Iron Claw, he could probably pull it off.
He probably could, but again, like, you can't just do a gimmick of what the kind of a Hogan promo. You better hit that growl in his voice.
Yeah, and I think because he did the Texas. One thing about Iron Claw that didn't get talked about, it's a great movie. If you don't know what it is, it's about the Von Erich. It is not an easy film to watch. Like, it's a beautifully made film, but it's hard to watch because it's so dark and
it's depressing.
Well, the real story is even worse than what the movie was, because
that's true. The movie did cut out even worse things, but apparently the writing and directing team said that it got to a point where they didn't want to make it like you don't know how many people came to me after that movie and were like, oh, did all that stuff really happen? And I'm like,
you could do a
it
whole
was
movie
even
just
worse.
on Fritz. If they did a movie just on Fritz, it'd be a horror movie, literally. They probably should, by the way. They need to go back. Holt, what's the guy's name played Fritz in it? Holt McClarney or something like that.
Yeah.
I apologize. I don't remember his name. Fantastic portrayal. Fritz was such an evil, rotten, detestable human being.
Yeah.
But they got the culture. Texas of that period had a very distinct culture built into it, which is part of the Von Erich story. And I thought they really grabbed that. So when you're talking about, look, Terry Bollea is Tampa, Florida, and that's an area there's a very distinctive boomer Florida man aspect to Terry Bollea and Hulk Hogan, especially as he got older. You're from there. I've got family in Clearwater, so I know exactly what this is. And people probably don't even know what to call it. But, he's had Hogan's Beach there. He's lived there. He lived in California briefly when he first blew up, but he's basically lived in Tampa all his life that we've known him as Hulk Hogan. That boomer Florida man aesthetic very much became a big chunk of late model Hulk Hogan. And that's part of something you're going to have to get a hold of. And you live there, so you explain it better than I can.
I mean, the best way that I could describe it, it's almost like it's almost like this smashing of old school biker meets just chilling at the beach attitude with super traditional views. That's probably the best way that I could describe it. Like, there's just it's just this aesthetic of like almost your old grandpa who did the biker lifestyle, and they hang out at the beach, and they're cool in that aspect, but they have sort of traditional views that maybe that aren't necessarily that well in line with where some of the younger generation is. That's probably the best way that I could describe what that sort of boomer aesthetic is down here in Central Florida.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. All right, Hulk Hogan is dead. His legacy will live on. The controversy will definitely live on.
Hi, I'm Kristen Bell, and if you know my husband Dax, then you also know he loves shopping for a car. Selling a car? Not so much.
We're really doing this, huh?
Thankfully, Carvana makes it easy. Answer a few questions, put in your VIN or license, and done. We sold ours in minutes this morning, and they'll come pick it up and pay us this afternoon.
Bye-bye, truckie.
Of course, we kept the favorite.
Hello, other truckie.
Sell your car with Carvana today. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's talk movies, which is your bread and butter. Last time we talked to you, and by the way, the clips and stuff have been doing gangbuster business involving you, because we were talking about superheroes and Superman and Fantastic Four. Well, both those movies have come out now, and both have done remarkably pretty well. The summer box office is actually having a bit of a moment, with a couple of exceptions. Smurfs bombed real good and hard. There's been a few other things, but are you surprised? Because a lot of people seem surprised. They were hopeful, but June and July is looking like it's been pretty good business.
I'm not surprised that it's been a big month for the industry, because it's not just the superhero films. There's also F1, which and Jurassic World Rebirth.
F1's a superhero film. I'm sorry. Look, Top Gun's a superhero film. F1's a superhero film. You know, Fast and Furious are Marvel superhero films. Let's be fair. F1 is a superhero film. It's got Brad Pitt in it. I know it's a car racing movie, but it's a superhero film. That's the plot line.
Well, I mean, it's a very underdog sports story thing with Brad Pitt running around doing the charm stuff. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm not surprised that the superhero films are doing pretty good. I'm definitely not surprised that Jurassic World's doing good, even with the very mixed reception, because people love going to see dinosaurs. The F1, I was a little concerned about because of how much they put into that movie, and I didn't know how the general audiences were going to respond to that film. But it's ended up doing really well at the box office. So July has been a very, very big boost for the industry. It's almost every weekend there was a movie coming out that everybody was going out to see. August won't be as big. They've got some little things here or there that could potentially be successful, but I don't think you're going to be seeing the kind of box office returns that you got in July. That being said, if you look at where Superman and Fantastic Four are tracking, they're still not looking to be making $1 billion. And it used to be that these superhero movies would make $1 billion easy. Now, some of that is the change in spending habits pre-COVID and post-COVID. But I do think that a lot of that is that a lot of people have sort of started to lose faith in these superhero movies. And as I said, when Thunderbolts had kind of like a very rocky very rocky box office while being well received by audiences and critics, you're not going to gain back all that goodwill overnight. So it's going to take time if they ever want to get back to the point where these movies are making $1 billion plus. But these movies are tracking to be making about 700 mil plus worldwide when it's all said and done. And it's been very good. They've been both well received by critics and audiences. And so the word of mouth is definitely going to help them. But I can't say I'm too surprised. If anything, I'm more surprised that the original movie F1 ended up doing as well as it did.
There was an interesting number in the Fantastic Four, and I wanted to ask your opinion on it. I'm getting this from Deadline. We'll link to it in the show notes, herdtell.substack.com. Subscribe if you didn't. I think this is interesting. So they had more of a drop-off for Fantastic Four on Saturday than they thought. Now, this is not me being cynical. It didn't, like, you're talking you're going to be over $100 million no matter what. We're slicing hair here. But there was a very interesting thing in Deadline about who's going to this movie, because traditionally superhero movies are family movies.
Yeah.
And according to Deadline, they are going, but once you get out of the metro centers cities are overperforming with Fantastic Four. And then when you go to rural and suburban areas, they're underperforming like double digits, like 13%. And kids under 13 were only like 8%, which is way under what a superhero movie is doing. It may be a bit of an anomaly, and there's a lot of other PG-13 movies out, so it might be a little bit of that. But this also tracks a little bit like these superhero movies are not just automatic show up family movies anymore. And that audience is starting, the Marvel audience especially, this has been a thing, this came out in Thunderbolts. The Marvel audience is tracking older. And it's something to kind of think about, that these movies coming out, there's demographic divides, and it's not just people that like Marvel or not. It's like city people, suburban families. Suburban families, if you take 4 or 5 people to a movie, that gets expensive. Let's wait for streaming. City, it may be 1 or 2 or 3 people. You can still afford it. This is part of the movie business that's fascinating to me. You've been covering it, but it doesn't get covered in the actual press and media as much as we probably should. That's what's affecting a lot of box office, especially with what you just said, whereas we're probably not going to see a lot of billion-dollar box offices anytime soon. This is part of it.
Yes, it is. And again, like, you can't, when you do what the MCU did, where it got to the point where people started to feel like they have to do homework to understand these movies, it makes it harder and harder to get people to trust you in the same way that they used to. Not to mention, you have all these MCU shows coming up on Disney Plus. It's very easy for people to be like, well, we'll just wait for the movie to show up on Disney Plus. And like I said, that's why I don't believe that we're going to be seeing any billion-dollar superhero films. And we might see it with Spider-Man and with the Avengers Doomsday, but that's kind of a cheat code there. I will tell people this for Fantastic Four, and this is one of the things that I really liked about it. You literally do not have to have watched any MCU film, and you can still watch this movie. It's so nice to not feel like I had some missing homework or something while watching one of these. With Superman, that's supposed to be kind of a fresh start there. And so I don't think there was anything that movie had to deal with in regard to, people having to do homework or anything like that to understand it. But like I said, it's not good. You're not going to get these crowds to trust you the way that they used to overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take consistency. And right now they've at least done what they've had to do so far. I mean, Thunderbolts ended up being very well received. Fantastic Four has been well received. It's going to do good at the box office. So now their next big test is to make people is to really use that upcoming Spider-Man film and the Avengers Doomsday stuff to their advantage.
My theory on Thunderbolts was it didn't take itself too seriously. The fact that they were the JV Avengers as part of the plot line, they openly acknowledged it. I think that's why that worked. They didn't try to take themselves too seriously. Not that it wasn't a serious movie, but they did a lot of winking and nodding of, yeah, we know we're not the Avengers, but let's see what we can do with it. It was built into the cake, right? I've got real concerns trying to bring the Avengers back and more Spider-Man and all the rest of it with Marvel, that they're not going to be able to do that same thing with another string. It is another string, JV string of the Avengers, even though you're going to have some of the same people. I worry about how Downey Jr. is going to be responded to on his heel turn, since we're talking wrestling terminology. I'm kind of worried about this next Avenger thing coming out because, look, again, I'm the cynical guy that doesn't care, so I'm not the demographic anyway. But I'm hearing from people, I've heard from my own kids who like Avengers was on for every day for probably 6 weeks when Endgame and Infinity War came out in my house. They love those movies. They're just not feeling it yet. Now, maybe when they start promoting it, it'll change a little bit. But I think what made Thunderbolts work, I'm kind of worried Marvel's going to take the wrong lesson of that and not be able to apply it to the Avengers themselves, which is supposed to be their tentpole. I just don't know how much they're still there.
I mean, I think that's a legitimate concern. And to add to that concern, I will say that Fantastic Four is very different than the typical MCU fare in that it takes place in a completely different timelines, which they can get away with now because of all this multiverse stuff. And in this timeline, it's a completely different aesthetic and feel than other MCU movies. It's more like if you were watching a actual comic book. And there's it's a completely different type of world that this Fantastic Four are playing with compared to the rest of the MCU. So that really helps both of these last two MCU movies to stand out compared to the MCU films that people have gotten used to. So it is going to be interesting to see how they then transition that, because Spider-Man is going to be, we've seen that before. And the Avengers Doomsday and all that's going to be a bunch of multiverse stuff, a lot of cameos. It's going to be doing a lot of the stuff that they've been getting criticized for over the last couple of years. So it is going to be interesting to see how they handle that compared to these last two movies.
Talk about the business aspect of it too, because I think something to watch going forward, especially as they start to try to roll the Avengers back out for Marvel. And the DC guys going forward are going to start having to pay attention to this too. If you let's take Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts grossed about $382 million worldwide. That's a fantastic number for everything except in the Marvel universe where you got Endgame and stuff. That's, kind of run of the mill, but that's a great box office by any other measurement. The problem is, if you're going to start making Avengers movies, if the new ceiling on superhero movies is not $1 billion worldwide box office, it's more like, let's say the Avengers give them a healthy bump. They get 500, 600 million. That's a healthy haul, right? You can't be making $200 and $300 million Avenger movies that are going to be making $300 to $500 million at the box office. That math don't work. Are they going to, at some point, going to have to try to figure out that, like, look, this is not the era before. We can't just throw unlimited amount of money at these things and reel in the business model a little bit, because I know DC's smart. They're looking at it and they're like, all right, superhero movie, 100 to 150, that's what you're going to get if it hits. If it hits.
Yeah.
So that's going to change how they budget out all the rest of them. Like, all right, if it hits, we're going to get $120, $130 million box office. That's how the studios usually plan. But Disney and Marvel, because they had all that success, they can get a little punch drunk on it. Is Marvel going to have to start looking at this and going, we can't shoot for $100 billion box office, so we need to reel this thing in a little bit?
I mean, you could argue that Marvel should have already been look, we really look in a post-COVID world, billion-dollar films aren't as common as they were towards the second half of the 2010s. Like, if your movie is making like 700 to 800 million, that's a really big success in a post-COVID world. But to get to the point where you're making $1 billion, like, to make $1 billion, you can't just be making a bunch of money in the States. You also have to be making a bunch of money internationally. And these superhero movies have been losing some of the hold that they've had internationally, especially in China. China's really starting to reject these superhero films. So as far as I'm concerned, it's been time for them to start scaling back their budgets.
Well, if you're going to pay Robert Downey Jr. what Fantastic Four is clearing on a 3-day weekend, like, that business model just is going to have issues. Yeah. I know I'm exaggerating a little bit because Fantastic Four is going to make more than that. Downey's deal is like $80 million to $100 million, depending on whose version you want to believe, plus the escalators and the points and all that. But a movie getting $80 to $100 million opening nowadays is a really good opening. That's what they're just paying Robert Downey Jr. by himself. And I know that's a multi-deal, but the numbers of this thing is just getting out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if in their minds, they're really hoping that that Doomsday and Secret Wars and this thing that they're building towards for these new Avengers movies are going to be these massive, we're going back to the Infinity War days. And it's like, I just don't think these movies are going to be that successful where you're talking about freaking $2 billion. These movies have not been picking up that kind of steam. So it's going to be interesting because I do think, like I said, I mean, there was a story that came out that Kevin Feige was having conversations with VFX teams on how to lower costs and stuff like that. And to me, it's like, I feel like you should have been doing this years ago.
Yeah, but they couldn't because, and I don't want to get into the politics of Disney because we've covered that as nauseum at this point, but they need that money. They have the streaming service to rescue. They have the box office to rescue. They have there's merchandise to move, buddy. You got to move the merchandise. We got to have a big tent pole.
Well, I mean, the box office to rescue for them. I mean, like there used to be, because we are in the 2020s, we moved into a new world. It used to be that the big box office stuff, that was really going to be like the movie of the year. We're going to be superhero films that came in and grabbed $1 billion. Those were the movies of the year. It's no longer that way. Avatar, Barbie, even like stuff like Wicked, Top Gun Maverick, Lilo and Stitch. Like it's not just superhero movies that the industry is relying on anymore. These Jurassic World movies, like they've got much more competition compared to the 2010s, where they almost had everything to themselves, give or take a couple things here or there. So they really got to do a little bit more humble pie with themselves to see more success, to get better profits.
The 2025 box office, I just pulled this up. I wanted to see it. Worldwide box office, Ninja 2, that's a Chinese picture, 1.8 billion. None of us saw it, but it's a massive movie.
And it will be getting a re-release in the fall with English dubbing. So I'm interested.
Yeah, and that's it. I'm glad you brought that up because when it happens, I want to talk about it because China is rejecting American movies, and now they're seeing what's happening with Indian movies, and they want to try to get into the American market, kind of the reverse. That's another topic for another day. We'll bring that up later. Number 2, Lilo and Stitch. We covered that. Minecraft movies 3, Jurassic World, How to Train Your Dragon, Mission Impossible, F1, Superman, Captain America, and Thunderbolts. That's as it sits right now today. Superman looks like it's going to peter out around that high 100s, low 200s, somewhere in that neighborhood. We'll see what Fantastic Four does. But that's the top 10 as of right now. Man, I could argue every single one of those is superhero movies, with the exception of Lilo and Stitch, which is a remake, which is about an alien that's basically a superhero that rescues a girl. So that's a superhero movie. So as much as we're knocking it right now, that's the top 10. And by the way, 11 is Sinners, which I think is probably one of the better original movies of the year that everybody ought to go see. And then Final Destination. And then Fantastic Four looks like it's going to pop up in there. Eventually, it'll probably make the top 10 at some point. That's the list. It's all superhero movies. But I think there's also this thing now where there's a lot of people like they are looking at that and go, well, the theater's all superhero movies and I'm just tired of them.
Okay. So if we take that that mindset, okay, well, these are basically superhero movies. Well, why are some of these movies doing better than the others? And I guess you could say maybe arguably is that they have a different aesthetic, they have different characters, so maybe that is appealing to folks more to see something newer.
We covered this last time you were on, but I'll lay it out because it's up in front of me. Snow White did $200 million. It's considered a flop.
Yeah.
Lilo and Stitch, another live action remake, cleared $1 billion, the magic number for super hit, right?
Yeah.
They were produced at exactly the same time. They came out closer together than they intended because of all the mess with Snow White. Snow White had all the bad viral press. Lilo and Stitch screwed up the ending and still got beloved. How's that for the case study, though? Because they're both remakes, live action remakes. They're both from the same people. They're from the same studio with different directors. But you have almost $1 billion gap in the box office.
But I think it's a generational thing. Because I said that one of the problems that Snow White was always going to face is that the Snow White as important as that film is, because it was the first ever one for the Disney animated canon, not that many younger people have the connection to that movie compared to a Lilo and Stitch that came out in the early 2000s and has been replayed like crazy on Disney Plus. So I think the big part of that is the generational. Not to mention there's been so many adaptations other than Disney of Snow White.
We talked about this before. IMAX and premium large formats, whatever they want to call it. There's a couple different acronyms floating around. Dolby's got their own thing, but the IMAX, everybody knows what I'm talking about, so I'm just going to call it IMAX. I know it's copyrighted. Sorry. The IMAX piece of the movie business is becoming really, really big. F1 was built around the IMAX experience. They had the exclusive releases. That's part of the reason it's done so well. Fantastic Four, something, according to Deadline, something like almost 40% of its business is IMAX. I really think we're getting to the point where movies are going to become in theater, IMAX, premium live events, to steal a wrestling term since we've been talking about wrestling. The IMAX premium experience for movies is going to be where they're going to go because they can make more money for the same movies, and their traditional theater experience is going to continue to suffer. Do you see that trend? Because I think the box office is starting to show that trend.
Yes, and the biggest story of all in regard to that situation is that the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's new movie that comes out next year, made the decision that they were going to, a year in advance, have tickets for sale for the Odyssey on IMAX 70 millimeter. And it turned into a circus. Everything is sold out. There's people attempting to resell the tickets, like this is a Taylor Swift concert. And you don't think other studios see that and say, "Whoa, how can we get into that kind of action?" So yes, I mean, you're seeing IMAX randomly re-releasing classical films. Just as I can say, "Oh, come see it in IMAX." It's absolutely becoming a bigger and bigger. In the same way that the popcorn bucket stuff, it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing to get people to come to the theater.
And like live events, like sporting events, like concert events.
Yeah, Regal is hosting SummerSlam on the big screen. Now, I looked at it. I thought it was a little too expensive that I think to go see it on the big screen. But there are people who are going to go and see that, just to say that they saw it on the big screen.
And what's going to happen is it's going to be like sporting events. It's going to be like concerts. It's going to be like live events. It's going to price out people, purposefully so. And
Yeah,
I understand
and
the business model,
who,
but that's what's going. The days of a working class family taking a family of 4 or 5 to the movies is probably done. But they're still making movies for working class families to bring 4 or 5 kids to the movies. And that audience just doesn't exist because they're priced out now.
Correct. And then what's going to happen is that if that is the way that they go, is that what's going to be the best way for these people to catch up on these movies? Wait until streaming. That's going to be their best way. And then all these people who want to save the theatrical model. Christopher Nolan is a big champion of the theatrical model, but like if you're selling movies tickets a year in advance to create this big demand and stuff like that, you're going to price out the very people that you're trying to get to come to the movies, who can be the lifeblood of the movie industry in terms of theaters. The whole appeal of the theatrical experience is supposed to be, this is more accessible than other things. You know, you're gonna buy, going to sports, concerts, plays, and stuff like that is more expensive than going to the movies. If you start making it as expensive as going to those things, then you're going to price people out.
I've done both recently. I can go to the minor league baseball stadium with my food and everything, including and parking and all that. It's cheaper than taking 4 of us to the movies by a not inconsiderable sum to go to a baseball game. A downtown stadium, it's in town, even with the food prices. It's cheaper for me to go to a minor league baseball game than a movie now.
Well,
that's bizarre to me.
There you go.
That shouldn't be. But I know I'm an old man yelling at clouds on this thing, but you're teaching an entire generation to not go to the movies, and then they're going to turn around and complain. This is an industry that has no self-awareness. They're complaining about nobody going to the theater while they're purposely killing their own theater business, except for the disposable higher income levels that they can get the premium ticket prices for. And then they're going to turn around and blame us, the normal people like me, like, well, you don't want to go to the theaters. No, I don't. And it's your fault, not my fault. But that's how they pitch it. The press that is embedded into for the access journalism of it to the movie business, they'll say that I'm the problem. And I'm not the problem. You're not giving me a product that is worth my time, effort, and money to go see at the price that I can afford to pay it.
Yeah, and you see that the way that they try to make up for it, because they're doing these premium things and they're doing these popcorn buckets. They're really starting to, what they really are catering to now it's the hardcore movie fans, people like me. Because when I go through
there's not enough of them.
Right, there's only so much of us.
There's not enough.
If you go through when I go through film Twitter, I see all these people going to the movies each weekend. Most times, who is it? Oh, it's a cinephile that it's easier for them to go by themselves to the movie. It's not necessarily someone who's a lot of the movie critics that have families that I know, they take advantage of the screenings to take their families to the movies because they don't have to pay the ticket.
I don't blame them for that because it's stinking expensive. And like, I don't go to sporting events now that I used to want to go to because it's just too much money and I can't justify it. I don't go to a lot of concerts because concert tickets are, my God, I went
to the Metallica concert recently, and it was like a 2-night event, and that was definitely a hit on the wallet. I mean, it was worth it because I never thought I'd get to see Metallica live, but it's very pricey.
I looked into taking the youngest to the Taylor Swift Eras tour. It was literally going to be cheaper for me to fly her to Europe and go to a show in Europe with the airfare and hotel and all of it than to try to get a secondary ticket anywhere in America.
Jeez.
I priced it out. I was like, we can go to the show in Poland or wherever it was. I forget. It was in Europe. And it was cheaper to fly to Europe and go to a show because of the way the secondary ticket market in America is so completely out of control.
See, and if anybody's on social media who sees you on social media, they're like, "Well, Lewis, if how on earth did you go and see Wicked almost 10 times in the theater and stuff like that?" Well, because I have an unlimited subscription. If I didn't have an unlimited subscription, I wouldn't be going that many times because it helps me save money. And keep in mind, I'm one person, so I'm very concerned about them pricing out people, especially with this whole recent media circus with the Odyssey tickets.
It's brilliant business, though. I will acknowledge that.
It is. It's brilliant, but there's going to be consequences.
Is the Odyssey going to be any good?
I think so, because I trust Christopher Nolan.
I trust him too, but then can I tell you my concern? And I hope he proves me wrong because I love Christopher Nolan movies. I really do. I thought Oppenheimer was brilliant. My concern was we've seen it with multiple directors that get really famous and they're the it director of the day. I don't care how brilliant a director you are, you have to have some guardrails to make your vision. You give Tarantino Elmore Leonard novel, he does great. You say do dialogue for 2.5 hours with Hateful Eight and it's a mess. You got to have some guardrails to your brilliance and talent, right? Everybody does. I don't think they put a lot of guardrails on him with this Odyssey project from the stuff we're reading, the way they're doing it. But I don't think he has any guardrails. Now, he may be enough self-aware to pull it all together and do it, but it feels like this is Nolan getting to do whatever he wants. And
it's not the first time.
I hope he proves me wrong, but we've seen this with director. You want to go back to Cimino and those guys, the directors, when they're like, here's your passion project. You've always wanted to do it, unlimited money, do whatever you want. Whatever I want usually doesn't work out. And I'm worried. I'm going to see it. I love Nolan. I think he'll prove me wrong, but I'm worried.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that he arguably didn't have guardrails. And I mean, Tenet isn't for everybody. That was one that didn't necessarily work out for some people. So it's either going to be another Tenet or he's going to pull off yet another masterpiece that's going to be remembered for decades to come.
Can I bring up the one point on it? Because I'm one of those people that didn't like Tenet because it was just too much. And you can call me stupid or whatever, but I'm like, no, I don't need a flow chart to explain a movie. I'm just I don't. And the visual, but I can acknowledge it was brilliant in the way he made it. It wasn't for me, and I didn't like it, but I can acknowledge the craftsmanship of him doing it, how brilliant it was. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Everybody knows the story of the Odyssey.
True.
So Oppenheimer, a little bit because it was a biopic, you could play with it. He's got material now, and he pulled it off with Batman. So I'm not saying he can't do this. The Odyssey's different, man, because you're talking about something that's really ingrained in the culture, even people that don't realize how ingrained, that stuff is in the culture. There's always a problem with that. I'm just going to say it. Go ahead and send your hate mail. I wish he hadn't put Damon in it. I really do. He needed to go put a no-name guy in it and not Damon. I know why he did it. I get it, but I don't like that casting decision. I hope he proves me wrong.
Yeah,
everybody knows this story, and the danger of it is you got to tell it. This isn't Inception where you're showing somebody something new that they've never seen before. Everybody already has seen this movie in their head 100 times, and that's the challenge of it.
And a lot of material. I don't know how it's going to be interesting to see how he edited this together, because there's a lot of material, a lot of like ideas and stuff going on in that story. I mean, there's freaking Cyclops, sea monsters, sirens going into the underworld. There's a lot of stuff that it's going to be interesting to see how he cuts that story together.
It's a 10-year journey in the epic, and he's going to slam it into one movie with every person working in Hollywood that has a half decent agent. It seems like.
We'll see. The man's pulled off miracles before, so let's hope he does it again.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm one of the ones that the Batman stuff, Dark Knight Rises, has really grown on me over the years. I didn't really like it when it first came out because I had a little bit of a reaction to Dark Knight where I think people overhyped it a little bit. I know it's one of the greatest movies ever, but it got over the top with people just like, oh, this is the great, like, calm down a little bit. So like Dark Knight Rises, it's grown on me over time as I go back and rewatch it, how good that was, that movie.
I've been a champion of that movie since day one.
You get to tell me you told me so on that one. That's fair. It's grown on me over time, but I believe in Nolan. But I'm just worried. And look, my dad's a Greekophile. He traveled, did a sabbatical in Greece and Turkey, and like my dad's all into that stuff. Speaks Koine Greek. Like I grew up around this material, so very much so. So it's one of those things I'm just a little worried about. I want it to really, really work. I'm really worried Matt Damon's in the he always plays Matt Damon era of being Matt Damon, and that's worried me. You're giggling, but you know exactly what Clooney's got the same problem. He's Clooney in every movie. Yeah. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but
yeah, I mean, thankfully Clooney's going to be doing a movie this year that he could get away with doing that. So, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Matt pulls off Odysseus.
Well, Clooney's a great director. He can go direct. I know Matt Damon can write. Maybe he'll just go do some writing for a while. And then another wrestling term, since we've been beating the wrestling terms to death, he need to go away for a while so we can miss him, right? He need to go to another territory for a little while and then come back, freshen up, learn a new hold.
The last time he took a break.
That's the part, like, go learn a new hold, kid, right? The old territory wrestling days. Go learn a new hold and come back and we'll freshen you up. I just need him to take a break. And I know why you don't, because you got short careers and whatever, but I don't know, brother. Movie talk with you is so great. You and your brother did the Real Lounge last night. It was fantastic. I've only gotten about halfway through it, but I was laughing out loud listening to it. You two have a good dynamic. It was pretty fun. Plenty of dry humor for people that want that sort of a thing. Let people know where they can keep up with Mendez Movie Report. You got the Real Lounge going with your brother. Tell everybody about all the stuff you got going on, my friend.
Yeah, just go to MendezMovieReport.com. Film reviews, Oscar projections, podcasts, links to any media appearances I do. I'm available on all socials: Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, Blue Sky, Letterboxd. If anybody out there happens to have the Award Expert app, I'm under Mendez Movie RPT, and you can find me there.
Is your brother doing the Dean Martin gimmick?
The Dean Martin gimmick? What do you mean? Like
functionally drunk, but not really drunk, but we're not really sure, so we're just all going to go with it and not talk about it.
I don't think he's ever been even buzzed. If anything, there have been times that I've been buzzed on the podcast, but he did catch me off guard last night because I could have swore he finished a game that he was supposed to do a review for. So I had to fly by my pants and turn it into an impressions.
Never work with family, buddy. Didn't anybody ever tell you that? No, you guys do a good job with the podcast. Make sure you check it out in glorious 4K video if you subscribe to his Substack, which we do. We will keep doing these. We will always have you on. Louis Mendez, you're the best, buddy. Appreciate you, sir.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Always, sir. Always. All the music on Heard Tell is provided under a Creative Content license from monstercat.com.
Thanks to VA, I have a place to call home with the VA Home Loan, an education with a GI Bill, the highest quality, most affordable healthcare, and the financial support I need to manage the disabilities that I have from my service. Get what you earned. Visit choose.va.gov.
Not all veterans are eligible for the type or amount of benefits mentioned here.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.